वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
Welcome to this Bhakti Vaibhav session. We were seeing the 11th chapter of first canto. 11th chapter is Lord Krishna's entrance into Dwaraka, and we have seen till text 33. Just to recap quickly, we saw the breakup of this chapter. Okay, so first 10 verses where the citizens of Dwarka welcome Krishna. Then the city of Dwarka is described in the next 5 verses. Then Krishna's reception by his friends and elders and his relatives, and how Krishna reciprocates with them. Let's discuss till 23rd verse from 16th. And the most beautiful and attractive features of Krishna is discussed from 24 to 27. And then the next two sections is basically dealing with the Vatsalya Rasa and Madhurya Rasa, where Krishna's dealings with, or mother's affection for Krishna is explained, and the dealings with the queens of Krishna is explained from 30 to 33. We have to see the last portion of this chapter, that's the transcendental activities and position of Krishna. That's from text 34 to 39. These set of texts from 34 to 39 are basically going to speak about that even though Krishna reciprocates, or when we see the pastimes of Krishna, it looks as if he's just one of the human beings, and people have affection for him. The mothers have affection for him, just like all mothers have affection for their sons, and the wives also have affection for their husband, just like all wives have affection for their husband. So similarly, the queens also have affection for Krishna. So Krishna's pastimes may seem mundane, but in verse 34, text 34 to 39, Suta Goswami explains to Shaunaka Rishi that even though the Supreme Lord performs such pastimes, still his position and his activities are transcendental in nature. And Srila Prabhupada in his purports, he illuminates on the same idea a lot more. He elaborates on this. Okay, so we'll quickly go through them. Text 34. The Lord was pacified after killing those kings who were burdensome to the earth. They were puffed up with their military strength, their horses, elephants, chariots, infantry, etc. He himself was not a party in the fight. He simply created hostility between the powerful administrators, and they fought amongst themselves. He was like the wind which causes friction between bamboos and so sparks a fire. So the example of bamboo was also given in the previous chapter. Okay, as bamboo scratch, and Krishna's pastimes in annihilating the demoniac elements, it goes through like this. So Srila Prabhupada, he speaks about how the Lord is the genuine proprietor and enjoyer of everything manifested in his creation, but demoniac people or deluded living beings think the material world is for their enjoyment. And when they engage in such kind of enjoyment, inevitably they end up doing sinful activities. Dharma saglani, that happens. And whenever there is a decrease or whenever there is a problem in upholding dharma, then the Supreme Lord appears. So, if you understand dharma here, basically is defined that everything that is manifested in the creation is actually meant for Krishna's enjoyment. And that is dharma, that is proper. And the living beings are supposed to encourage, or living beings are supposed to facilitate Krishna's enjoyment, either in the spiritual world or in the material world. And that facilitation of serving Krishna itself is called as dharma. And when the demoniac people think that they themselves are the enjoyers and they are not bothered about Krishna, or they don't even know him, or they don't want to give him any pleasure, then they keep themselves in the center. And that is called as dharma seglani. Okay, because dharma is not maintained there. The Supreme Lord is not pleased. So this whole purpose of dharma is that the Supreme Lord can be pleased. Ata pumbir puja shesha varnasham vivapashah swanushtita dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. Okay, so Hari should be pleased by following of dharma. So that's the actual definition of dharma. Okay, that's a constitutional position of the living entity that we already know from Prabhupada's teachings. But this is what dharma basically means, to please Krishna. And when that does not happen, when people are engaged in pleasing themselves and engaging in sense gratification, then that leads to dharma seglani. So I think in this purport, So in this purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that he says that those who are engaged in sense gratification are demons. Okay. Yeah, I think I had, but anyways, it's there in the purport. So Srila Prabhupada explains how there's friction, how just like fire is created by friction of bamboos in the forest, similarly hostility between different groups of politicians take place by the unseen design of the Lord. The unwanted administrators, puffed up by the false power and military strength, thus become engaged in fighting amongst themselves over ideological conflicts, and so exhaust themselves of all powers. The history of the world reflects this factual will of the Lord, and it will continue to be enacted until the living beings are attached to the service of the Lord. So till they are attached, till they are situated in their proper dharma, it is not possible, or rather, this cycle of two parties or two political parties coming together and fighting because of ideological differences will always happen. Because when we keep ourselves in the center, each and every person being an individual, he'll keep himself in center. So there's bound to be conflict. Only when Krishna is in the center and he is to be pleased, then there is no conflict. But if we are pleasing, or people are trying to please themselves, and there are political parties which are created only for their own purposes, then there should be ideological conflicts. And through that itself, by the illusory energy of the Lord, the conflicts happen and they get annihilated. And the same cycle keeps on happening. So only when one is engaged in devotion, we have seen in the previous purports also, right? Prabhupada writes, if people are engaged in devotional service, then society takes care of itself. Everything, all issues in the society automatically gets balanced properly. No problems come. Okay. So yeah, human life, the demonic people are always challenging the supreme power of the Lord, and such people who are the lowest of human beings, they do not understand that human life is especially meant for re-establishing the lost relation with the Lord, and they miss this opportunity by being engaged in material activities. So just by engaging in material activities, they lose the opportunity. One thing is they become demoniac, okay, because the ultimate definition of demoniac is one who keeps himself in the center. Okay, one who wants to enjoy separately from the Lord. That is a demoniac tendency. But he's not supposed to do that. He says all human beings are supposed to re-establish their lost relation with the Lord. Text 35. That Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, appeared on this planet by his internal potency and enjoyed himself amongst competent women as if he were engaging in mundane affairs. So it might look that Krishna was engaging with women as if he is engaging in mundane affairs, but he appears because out of his causeless mercy for the conditioned living entities and by his internal potency. He is not influenced by the external potency. So a person cannot compare himself with the activities or pastimes which Krishna performed. Okay, so the next few verses also will substantiate the same point. So Krishna's householder life is not like mundane sex relation. So Lord married and lived like a householder. So it looks like a mundane affair. But when we learn that he married 16,108 wives and lived with them separately in each and every palace, certainly it is not mundane. Okay. And these women whom he married were not ordinary women also. They underwent millions and millions of births of tapasya. And that's how they achieved the Lord as their husbands. And he performs his pastimes only to attract the conditioned souls. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about service. Okay, and he speaks about these two things, perverted service and perfected service. So service is pervertedly represented in the material world and broken untimely, resulting in sad experience. The women amongst whom he lived as their husband are not therefore women of this mundane world, but are eternally related with him as transcendental wives, a position which they attained by perfection of devotional service. That is their competency. So Srila Prabhupada here, he says that relations of this material world cannot help us to be happy perpetually. But relationship with the Lord is on the spiritual level. So therefore it's perfect. So perfected service is that service which is done in the relation to the spirit. on the spiritual level. Perverted service, anyway we have to do service. Okay, all living entities are service, as we seen I think in the previous purport. The service is our nature, but if you are engaged in serving this material world, then it results in sad experience. It results in misery. Okay, so perpetual happiness is with Krishna. So conditioned souls seek after perpetual happiness in all places. Okay, and when he comes to his senses and seeks after Brahman happiness, then he actually becomes happy. Okay. Or else it's not possible. Text 36. Although the queen's beautiful smiles and furtive glances were all spotless and exciting, and although they could conquer Cupid himself by making him give up his bow in frustration, and although even the tolerant Shiva could fall victim to them, still, despite all their magical feats and attractions, they could not agitate the senses of the Lord. Okay, so this is another example of how Krishna is situated in transcendental position. These queens' beautiful smiles and glances were all spotless and exciting, and they could even conquer the Kamadev himself, okay, who is conquering or basically bewildering the whole world. So these queens' beautiful smiles could conquer even him, and even the tolerant Shiva could fall victim to them. So basically means that even the greatest of the demigods, okay, they might also be conditioned, or they might also be influenced by the three modes. They also might not be able to maintain them in transcendental position. But the Lord could not be agitated by the queen's glances and their beautiful smile. Srila Prabhupada speaks about forbidden association with women. And he says the path of salvation, or the path of going back to Godhead, always forbids the association of women. And now it might seem that the Supreme Lord himself is associating with so much women, okay, so many women. So it looks like he's addicted to them. But to answer such questions, the sages at Naimisharya have discussed the transcendental character of the Lord in this verse and the following verses. Okay, the transcendental character of the Lord is discussed so that people can differentiate that these things are not mundane affairs. These are actually the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. And the best example is this verse itself. Okay, because any conditioned living entity can always fall down, okay, by the beautiful smiles of a woman. But the Supreme Lord is never affected. Srila Prabhupada elaborates on how the mundane sex life leads only to misery. And he quotes this verse, Pumsa Striya, does not quote, but he's basically giving the translation of that verse. Pumsa Striya mitni bhavameta tayor mitho hridaya granthi mahuhu atah graha kshetra sutapta vittai janasya mohoyam ahamameti. He says, no, a male is searching after a mate to his liking, and the female is looking after a suitable male. Pumsa Striya mituni bhava. Okay, so always this is there. And as soon as a male is combined with a female, the material bondage of the living being is at once tightly interlocked by the sex relation. Pumsa Striya mituni bhavayetam tayor mitho hridaya granthihi. It's a tight knot because of this relation. And as a result, their attraction to the illusory field of activities known as Griha, Kshetra, Sutta, Apta, Vittai, right? All these things become very attractive to them by the illusory energy of the Lord. Thus, a false but indefatigable attraction for the temporary material existence, which is full of miseries, is manifest. So, this is important to understand because this is the strongest bond in this material world. The attraction between male and female, this is the most strong or most tight bond in this material world. And if anyone desires to get out of this material world, he has to give up his association with women. Okay, this is very important. But in case of Krishna, okay, the queens of Krishna, okay, they attracted Krishna by their affection and service, and not by their feminine charm. Okay, the illusion living entity, he gets affected by the feminine qualities of a woman. But Krishna was not affected by that. He was, the Lord is all perfect and thus Atma Rama, or self-sufficient. He does not require anyone's extraneous help for his personal satisfaction. Therefore, the queens could not satisfy the Lord by their feminine attractiveness, but they satisfied him by their sincere affection and service. Being satisfied by the unalloyed service only, the Lord reciprocated the service just like a devout husband. or else Krishna does not have any need to become attracted to mundane feminine qualities. And there's this story of Narayana Rishi performing very intense tapasya, and as usual, Indra became very agitated with that, or disturbed with that. So he sent all the heavenly apsaras to agitate the mind of Narayana Rishi. You know the story? Do you know the story? You know this? Okay. Yeah, so he sent. But then what happened? Narayana Rishi, he himself produced Urvashi, who was the most beautiful of all the apsaras. Okay, and he said, that this is my present to you. You can take her to your heavenly planets. So you are trying to bewilder me with all these heavenly beauties, but I can produce much more beautiful woman than this. So you can take her as my gift to you. And Indra was embarrassed because of that. Okay. This is the example that the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. He is not bewildered because it's all part of his creation. He is self-satisfied. So in one of his purports, in the 6th canto, 1st chapter, 13th verse purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, Brahmacharya, the life of celibacy, has 8 aspects. One should not think of women, speak about sex life, dally with women. Dally means wasting time with women. Okay, just speaking all kinds of stuff. Look lustfully at women, talk intimately with women, or decide to engage in sexual intercourse. Nor should one endeavor for sex life or engage in sex life. One should not even think of women or look at them. Say nothing of talking with them. This is called first class brahmacharya. So this is the principle of brahmacharya ashram, and this is applicable in all the ashrams actually, because ultimately the association with women is forbidden. Okay, so when one enters grahastha ashram also, he can associate with his wife. Okay, and intimate association is accepted, or it's allowed only when there is a necessity to create progeny or to have children. Or else even intimate association between, even though one person is married, even though they are in grahastha life, intimate association between the male and female will lead to bondage. Okay, the ultimate idea is that bondage should not be there. Okay, so that's why Shastra says, putrarthe kriyate bharya. A wife is required only for having children. Okay, not for any other purpose. But some person thinks that, okay, I have wife and I can enjoy with her, then it creates the tight knot of bondage. So even in grahastha life, one is supposed to follow the principles of brahmacharya. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has told that one who associates with his wife only for procreation, but otherwise, that separation is always maintained. He is also brahmachari even though he is in grahastha ashram. Okay. And these 8 principles of brahmachari life should be followed for grahasthas also when it comes in relation to all other women apart from his wife. Okay, so he should not be thinking of any other woman. Okay, he should not be speaking about sex life. He should not be dallying with other women. Okay, not look lustfully at other women, talk intimately with other women, or decide to engage in sexual contact. And obviously, that's illicit sex. So even a grahastha is supposed to maintain this principle. Okay, so it's not that this is applicable only for brahmacharya ashram and grahastha, because there's some licenses there. Therefore, we can be loose in our attitude and character. No, that's not allowed. That's not dharmic. Okay. Yeah, in grahastha ashram there is some license to have association with one's wife, but the above principles of brahmacharya must be followed in relation to every other woman. And even with one's wife, one can have contact only for begetting children and not for sense enjoyment. Because ultimately it binds. Okay. Any association with women will always create bondage within this material world. And the ashramas are meant to cultivate spiritual life. Okay. Spiritual life means one should elevate himself in spiritual life. One should become pure devotee. So it does not mean that grahastha ashram is like you stop there. All this association with women is there. So it's like this 25 years of grahastha ashram, you can do whatever you want. It's not like that. Okay. One should always follow. That's why to become a good grahastha or vanaprastha or a sannyasi, brahmachari life is extremely important. Okay, the training that one person gets in brahmachari life sustains him in grahastha life also. If one is not trained as a proper brahmachari, he will not be able to follow these principles of brahmacharya even when he has entered the grahastha ashram. Okay. So brahmachari training is very important. Text 37. The common materialistic conditioned souls speculate that the Lord is one of them. Out of their ignorance, they think that the Lord is affected by matter, although he is unattached. Okay. Now, some people might think that Krishna came, he also got married. Okay, and he performed all those activities which a normal human being does. He also ate, he also slept, and there were sense objects, there were objects of this material world with which he interacted. So therefore, he is also like normal human being. Okay, but specifically it's mentioned here that he is unattached. Okay, so even though it might seem that he's interacting with the different sense objects present there, but he's unattached. Okay. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada writes that his different potencies work in a perfect plan of natural sequence, and thus he does everything by the agency of these potencies while remaining eternally the supreme independent. So he is not dependent on any of the sense objects. He is supremely independent, and he does everything by the agency of his potencies. But mental speculators, they misunderstand the position of the Supreme Lord. They think because he's interacting, he is also there within this material realm, he's interacting with this material sense object, so therefore he is also conditioned, he is also affected. He might not be as much affected as a normal condition living entity is, but because he is there, he is also affected, he is also impacted because of that. But that's not the case. The mental speculators compare everything from the standpoint of experimental knowledge of their own selves. Thus, when the Lord is found to act like an ordinary person in matrimonial bondage, they consider him to be like one of them. People say that Krishna is lusty. He stole the garments of the gopis, and he used to dance with so many women at the dead of night, midnight. Then he married 16,108 wives. He is also as lusty, or he is much more lusty than I am. So if Krishna can do all these things, why can't I? But then the pastime, his position itself is completely different. So mental speculators, they have this different logic. They think like this, and they because they want to indulge in all these kinds of nonsensical activities. So what do they do is logically they try to prove, or logically try to say that Krishna also was like this. See, he did this, he did that, he did this, he did that, and we are supposed to follow him. So therefore, why we can't do this? But he's not like other people. Yeah. Because common people are in ignorance, people of vicious character claim themselves as God and are accepted by such common people. So this is one more thing. That people, because they think that Krishna is also one of them, then it gives them the opportunity, or it gives them the thought that they can also become God. That they can also act like God. They can also have followers like this. And because common people are in ignorance, they accept such people. These people are abuddha, and therefore there is necessity of this movement to give them this knowledge. So this was specifically this word is used, abuddha. Vyaprinvanam yato abuddha. Okay. So they think that he is engaged just like an ordinary man. Aupamyena, by comparison with the self, Manujam is engaged just like an ordinary man. Vyaprinvanam. Because yataha abuddha, because they are foolish. They are foolish because of their ignorance. Text 38. This is the divinity of the personality of Godhead. He is not affected by the qualities of material nature, even though he is in contact with them. Similarly, the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord do not become influenced by the material qualities. So even though Krishna is in contact with them, he is not affected by the qualities of material nature. And it's not only applicable to Krishna, but even to his pure devotees. They also do not become influenced by the material qualities. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about Krishna killing asuras. He's killing the non-believers like Jarasandha and other asuras directly in contact with the modes of material nature. Is there. So one may argue that although his relation with the goddess of fortune may be transcendental, what about his relation with the Yadu dynasty, being born in that family, or his killing the non-believers like Jarasandha and other asuras who are directly in contact with the modes of material nature. So they, these asuras are heavily under the influence of the modes of material nature, and Krishna is directly touching them. He's killing them and doing all those things. So is he not impacted because he's directly dealing with the modes of material nature? He's coming in physical contact with them. One may argue like this, but the divinity of the personality of Godhead is that he is never in contact with the qualities of material nature in any circumstances. Actually, he is in contact with such qualities because he is the ultimate source of everything. Yet, he is above the actions of such qualities. Yeah. So, Srila Prabhupada writes here that even though apparently it looks that he is in contact with the material nature, but he is never in contact with the qualities of material nature in any circumstance. But he is still contact. The contact is there because he is the ultimate source of everything. But he is not influenced by those qualities. Okay, that's the primary point. And I think Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur will specifically write this in his commentary. So we'll see that. Srila Prabhupada speaks about how the devotees are transcendental. And he gives the example of the 6 Goswamis. And he says some Mahabhagavatas are engaged in worldly dealings yet are unaffected. Unless these neutralities of life are there, one cannot be considered situated in transcendence. So he speaks about the neutralities in this previous sentence. And he says that that if someone might fall down, but still if he's engaged 100% in devotional service of the Lord, then his fallen condition will vanish. We'll see the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in this regard. He says, it is just like the intelligence of the greatest devotees, which has as its object the Lord, tat ashraya buddhihi, and always remembers him. So the greatest of devotees, their intelligence is always situated in Krishna. Though the intelligence is situated in Prakriti and is situated in the gunas of Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, while being contented, praising or criticizing, while being full or afflicted with hunger and thirst, and while waking, sleeping and in deep sleep, it is not connected to the gunas because of its indifference to the gunas. In the same way, though the Lord accepts the material objects of the senses, he is not affected by them at all because he is devoid of attachment to them. Okay, so the contact might be there, apparent contact might be there, but because he is not attached to them, he is never influenced by them. And the same principle also applies to the pure devotees also. It might look, they have this gross body. Mahabhagatas, they also have this gross body. It looks like that. They have this gross body, they have their mind, intelligence, senses. They also engage in eating, in sleeping. Their body also needs rest. And we see things like that. Okay, which apparently shows that that they are influenced by the modes. Okay, but the main point is that they are not affected by them because they are not attached to these activities. Okay, or this attached to the activity of eating, attached to the activity of sleeping. Okay, these are requirements. Okay, but they are not attached to that. Okay, so one who is not attached to the gunas is in a liberated platform. One who is attached, even though he may be in contact, even though he may have this gross body, subtle body, it's there. But because he's not attached to them, he comes to the liberated or transcendental platform. This is what in Rupa Goswami speaks about this Jivan Mukta. It's there in Nectar of Devotion. And also in the Sandarbhas, Jiva Goswami speaks about this. That even though a person, okay, he may be a sadhana bhakta, okay, he's doing his devotional service and he has attained perfection. Even though he has his body, subtle and gross body, still he is considered as a liberated person because even though he is surrounded by the modes, by the different sense objects which are basically manifestation of the modes, everything in the material world is a manifestation of the modes. So even though he is surrounded by them, because he is not attached to them, therefore he is in the liberated platform. So what is the basic root cause of existence in this material world is attachment to the modes, the activities of the modes, the sense objects which are created by the modes. Okay. Text 39. The simple and delicate women truly thought that Lord Shri Krishna, their beloved husband, followed them and was dominated by them. They were unaware of the extent of the glories of their husband, as the atheists are unaware of him as the supreme controller. So these women, they thought that Krishna was dominated by them, but they were not aware, and they were not aware of the position of the Lord. And this is for the sake of pastimes. Srila Prabhupada explains that if devotees, even though it's mentioned that these women, they are ignorant of the position of the Lord, still their position is transcendental. Even though the devotees are ignorant, yet they are transcendental. How is that? Even the transcendental wives of Lord Shri Krishna did not know completely the unfathomable glories of the Lord. This ignorance is not mundane because there is some action of the internal potency of the Lord in the exchange of feelings between him and his eternal associates. So if you remember, Srila Prabhupada in one of his purports, right, that there are two types of bewilderment. Bewilderment due to internal potency and bewilderment due to external potency. When he was speaking about the Lord's form as Narayana, at that context we discussed that point. So this is another example that they are bewildered by the internal potency to facilitate the pleasure of Krishna in his pastimes. So the wives of Lord Krishna were made to forget the immeasurable glories of the Lord by the internal potency, so that there might not be any flaw of exchange, and they took it for granted that the Lord was a henpecked husband, always following them in lonely places. Yes, then Srila speaks about the mental speculators and how the Lord can be known only by the mercy of Krishna himself. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, they also do not know him because perfect knowledge of those women arising from his Swarupa is covered by the Yoga Maya of the Lord in order to nourish rasa. Yeah, this Prabhupada has already explained. One cannot consider these women material because they are endowed with prema and the Lord is controlled by their prema, since it has been said that they serve the Lord with prema or with love and devotion. Okay, so this ends the chapter 11, and from verse 34 to 39 today we saw the transcendental activities and position of Krishna, that how even though he's interacting with apparently interacting with the material objects, still his position is transcendental, and that his devotees' position is also transcendental, who are engaged cent% in his service. And the women or the queens of Krishna, they thought Krishna to be mundane. Now, different people. See, if you see the sequence of verses, yeah. So Supreme Lord appeared, out of his causeless mercy by his internal potency and engaged in apparently mundane affairs with the wives. Okay. The queen's beautiful smiles could not capture the senses of the Lord. So that way the Lord is transcendental. Okay. So one can observe that, one can see that in his pastimes. And the materialistic people, they speculate that the Lord is one of them, and they think the Lord is affected by matter, although he is unattached. So from the perspective of the speculative people, from the perspective of an ordinary person who looks or who understands, or who not understands, but who sees or who listens to the pastimes of the Lord, or who comes to know the pastimes of the Lord, he might think like this. But the divinity of the Lord is not affected in any way. Similarly, the devotee's divinity is also not affected. And even these women, they thought Krishna to be one of them. Okay, or basically as an henpecked husband, that they controlled Krishna. They thought that they controlled Krishna, but they could not understand Krishna's position as a Supreme Lord because they were influenced by the internal potency of the Lord. And those verses, those previous 5 verses from 34 to 38, they speak about those people who are influenced by the external energy. So those who are influenced by the external energy, they think that the Lord is not transcendental but mundane as one of them. And those who are under the influence of the internal energy, even they cannot understand the supreme position of the Lord for the sake of pastimes. So those who are under the influence of external energy, they are bewildered by Mahamaya. And those who are engaged in pastimes with Krishna, they also, their knowledge is covered by Yogamaya potency to facilitate the pastimes. Okay, but the Supreme Lord is transcendental to both of them because his position is completely beyond this Maya. So this ends chapter 11. In the 12th chapter is the birth of Emperor Parikshit. From 12th chapter we bring, or this discussion brings back to the original questions which were asked by Shaunakadi Rishis in the 4th chapter. Okay, in the 4th chapter they wanted to speak, or they asked Suta Goswami about Srimad Bhagavatam, about Vyasadeva, about Parikshit Maharaj, about Shukdev Goswami. Okay. So Suta Goswami spoke about Srimad Bhagavatam, the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then he wanted to describe the activities of Maharaj Parikshit. And to do that, he wanted to give a context. So he spoke about Ashwatthama, how Ashwatthama shot a Brahmastra, to kill the child in the womb, and all those things. And from that point onwards, then it takes a detail where glories of Krishna is described by different devotees. Queen Kunti's prayers are there, Bhishma's prayers are there, Lord's pastime in making sure that Yudhishthira Maharaj accepts instructions from Bhishma Dev, glorification of his devotee. And then Krishna leaving Hastinapur, how the devotees felt when he left Hastinapur. Then he entered Dwaraka, how devotees felt when he entered Dwaraka. So as Suta Goswami starts to speak about Krishna, then he went speaking only about Krishna. Okay. So now in this chapter, Shaunaka Rishi will ask some questions, the same questions he will repeat, or he will bring back the discussion. Okay. So that will be done in the first 3 verses, where inquiries by Shaunaka Rishi should be there about Maharaj Parikshit. And from 4 to 6, then Suta Goswami will again speak about Maharaj Yudhishthira's opulence and his service to Krishna. Then from 7 to 11, he will recap of what actually happened, how the Supreme Lord saved Parikshit Maharaj in the womb of Uttara, then the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, and 16 to 29 is enumerating Maharaj Parikshit's qualities. Astrologers or Brahmanas or astrologers, they'll come and they say, by looking at the astral chart of Parikshit Maharaj, they'll tell this boy will be so glorious, he'll have these qualities like this. And finally, how Maharaj Yudhishthira raised Parikshit Maharaj in luxury is mentioned, and his performance of horse sacrifices. So from a narration point of view, from the narrative point of view, this is a very simple chapter. Okay, because it's only the flow is there of what all actually happened, the sequence of events, and what are the glories of Parikshit Maharaj. So those things are there. But in this specific chapter, Srila Prabhupada writes a lot in his purports. We might not be able to see all of them, but there are very important points which he speaks about, which we'll just see, okay, and then continue. Text 1 of 12th chapter. The sage Shaunaka said, the womb of Uttara, mother of Maharaj Parikshit, was spoiled by the dreadful and invincible Brahmastra weapon released by Ashwatthama. But Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Supreme Lord. So this Shaunaka Rishi is actually reiterating what Suta Goswami has already told, or what is already known. So that he's not directly blaming Suta Goswami here that he went somewhere else. He wanted to hear this. Okay. So he's telling, this is what he told us. Okay, this is what happened. But Maharaj Parikshit was saved by the Supreme Lord. So Srila Prabhupada, he says, he writes here, the sages were absorbed in hearing the descriptions of Krishna. He writes, this race of Brahmastra, son of Drona, his punishment by Arjun, Queen Kunti Devi's prayers, the Pandavas visit to the place where Bhishma Deva was lying, his prayers, then Lord's departure for Dwaraka, his arrival at Dwaraka, residing with the 60,000 queens were also narrated. So it's a very short summary of what we have seen from chapter 7 onwards. Okay, 7 to 11, basically 4 chapters. The sages were absorbed in hearing such descriptions, but now they wanted to turn to the original topic, and thus the inquiry was made by Shaunaka Rishi. So the subject of the release of the Brahmastra weapon is by Ashwatthama is renewed. Again is recited. Okay. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur specifically writes regarding the glory of Parikshit Maharaj, and he says that no one had ever heard of such a devotional king who saw Krishna when he was in the womb, and one who punished Kali. Only Parikshit Maharaj did that. He saw Krishna in his womb, in his mother's womb. Text 2. How was the great Emperor Parikshit, who was a highly intelligent and great devotee, born in that womb? How did his death take place? And what did he achieve after his death? So the question was, even though Ashwatthama shot a Brahmastra, the most powerful weapon, how was it possible? Now, how was Parikshit Maharaj, a great devotee, born in that womb, which should have been destroyed by the Brahmastra? Basically asking, okay, please tell me how Krishna protected that womb, how Krishna protected Parikshit Maharaj. So it's a prompt. The question is a prompt for Suta Goswami to speak that pastime again. How did his death take place? Now, how did he leave his body? And what did he achieve after his death? What was his destination? How was he born? How did he die? And what was his destination? Okay. Just by knowing these 3 activities, one can understand how glorious a person is, how glorious a devotee is. A devotee's glory is by seeing how he leaves his body and how much he is remembered or what did he achieve after leaving his body. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada speaks about the downfall of Brahmanas, which indicates the beginning of age of Kali. and he says that this Brahmana or the age of Kali began just after the assumption of power by Maharaj Parikshit, and the first sign of misgiving was exhibited in the cursing of such a greatly intelligent and devoted king as Maharaj Parikshit. Okay. And Srila Prabhupada also makes his point that Maharaj Parikshit could have invoked the mercy of the Lord to save him, but he did not want to because he was a pure devotee. Pure devotees accept any tribulations that they get. Okay. So even though they are potent enough to counter curse or nullify that curse, still they do not do that. Understanding that it's the will of the Lord. Because a pure devotee always understands that Krishna is the one who's controlling my life. And if Krishna wants something like this to happen in my life, then why should I go against the will of Krishna? This is the thought process. So they, even though he has this potency to nullify that curse, still he did not do because he was a pure devotee. And the degradation or the first symptom of this age of Kali happens with the degradation of the highly talented Brahmana community. Okay. So when the Brahmana community is not proper, then the society, Prabhupada explains that Brahmana is the head of the society. And if the head is not proper, if the man is crazy, he's mad, then there's no point how strong his arms are, how fit he is, how strong his legs are. Everything is working nicely, but if the head is not proper, it's of no use. So the whole society collapses because of the degradation of Brahmanas. That's why Srila Prabhupada said that this movement is supposed to make a class of Brahmanas to restore sanity in the society, so that the head is proper in the society, and that way the whole society can be improved. Okay. Maharaj Parikshit was extremely fortunate because he saw the Lord protecting him in his mother's womb before he was born, and when he was about to die, he received Krishna in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. During his birth also he saw Krishna, or rather even before his birth, and during his death also he received Krishna in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 3. We all respectfully want to hear about him, Maharaj Parikshit, to whom Shukdev Goswami imparted transcendental knowledge. Please speak on this matter. So finally they are concluding that we want to hear about Maharaj Parikshit, and we also want to hear how Shukdev Goswami spoke to Maharaj Parikshit. So please talk to us about this. Srila Prabhupada speaks about the process of hearing and chanting. Okay. And he says that the disposition that is required for attaining transcendental realization is one should be serious and one should be sincere. Okay. One should be serious to hear the message or to recite the message, chant the message, and one should be sincere also. Okay. So both is required. Transcendental realization is attained by such serious hearing and chanting, and not otherwise. Okay. So realization comes. We might know many things. Okay. Realization is different from knowing things. Normally when we are new, when a new devotee comes, he wants to know many things. Okay, all kinds of books we will read, so many knowledge, this commentary, that commentary, this archer, what he says, and all those things we do. We want to gain lots and lots of knowledge. Okay, but knowledge is not the same as realization. Realization comes through service. Okay, just by doing service, realization is attained. So, serious hearing and chanting will lead to transcendental realization, not accumulation of knowledge. Not by reading books or not by hearing many lectures. If we are not serious or if we are not sincere in hearing and chanting, and even though we might hear so many things, but still the transformation of heart or the realization will not come up. Okay, so our hearing and chanting should be very sincere. Okay, it should be sincere and serious. We should be serious about our spiritual life. And in contrast to such hearing and serious hearing and chanting, Srila Prabhupada gives the example of this is basically a story which is told in this Ramakrishna mission. Okay, that Ramakrishna, he is the spiritual master, and he injected spiritual force into the disciple, who is Vivekananda, by an electric shock, current generated by the master. And the disciple begins to feel the shock. He becomes unconscious, and the master weeps for his exhausting his store of so-called spiritual assets. So this is a pun. This is for this This happened when Vivekananda, Ramakrishna, he touched Vivekananda, and this passage of electric current that happened, this shock was there, and then Ramakrishna, he fell unconscious, and then after he woke up, he started crying because he said that all my spiritual assets I've already given you, so I'm back to square one. No, I don't have anything. So spiritual transformation or this hearing and chanting does not act like this. No, it does not work like that. Okay, it's actually the opposite way. The more we recite, the more realization we get, and the more we hear, the more realization we get. Okay, so he says, we do not find such folk tales in the dealings of Shukdev Goswami and his great disciple Maharaj Parikshit. The sages of Naimisharanya were very respectful in hearing about Maharaj Parikshit because of his receiving knowledge from Shukdev Goswami by means of ardent hearing. Ardent hearing from the bona fide master is the only way to receive transcendental knowledge. The process is simple, but only the sincere party can achieve the desired result. So seriousness and sincerity both are required. Okay. Text 4. So Suta Goswami starts speaking on. Okay. And he says, Sri Suta Goswami said, Emperor Yudhishthira administered generously to everyone during his reign. He was exactly like a father. He had no personal ambition and was freed from all sorts of sense gratification because of his continuous service onto the lotus feet of the Lord Shri Krishna. So in these 3 verses from 4 to 6, again Maharaj Yudhishthira's opulence and his service to Krishna is explained. And we have discussed such similar topics in the previous chapters also. Okay. So here the context is that in speaking of Parikshit Maharaj's glories, he wanted to take birth in a highly respected family or highly devoted family is a fortune, or it's a great quality of the one who is born here. So in that respect, Yudhishthira Maharaj's quality as a great devotee and the environment in which Parikshit Maharaj was born, it's again mentioned here. That is one thing. Another thing, from this whole Bhagavatam point of view, this even though Srimad Bhagavatam is supposed to speak, or rather Srimad Bhagavatam is speaking the topmost devotional service or the topmost dharma of devotional service to the Lord, but we also see that there are many instances where it's mentioned how the kings ruled the world. Okay. And that can be tied back to this verse from the 2nd chapter, where it's mentioned how Varnashrama institution is actually meant for serving the Supreme Lord. How Varnashrama institution is actually meant for pleasing the Lord. Okay. Now we quote this verse, Atat Bumbir Vishashesha Varnashrama Vivakasha Swarshritasya Dharmasya Samsiddhir Haritoshanam. So how did the kings, the great kings of the previous ages, how did they do that? How did they please the Lord? By performing their duties. So this is mentioned, okay, as an example. So that's why we'll see many kings. There will be many kings about whom these things would be spoken about, and how they engaged in devotional service and how they encouraged the citizens of their kingdom to engage in this Varna and Ashrama duties so that they can ultimately please the Supreme Lord. Okay, so these 3 verses will speak about that. Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he speaks about the Raja and Praja. Okay, we have already seen this, that Praja means anyone who is born in that particular kingdom. Praja, like one who is born. Right? Here in the word Praja is significant. The etymological import of the word is that which is born. On the earth, there are many species of life, from the aquatics up to the perfect human beings, and all are known as Praja. And Lord Brahma is known as Prajapati, okay, because it's the grandfather of all who have taken birth. So thus Praja is used in a broader sense than it is now used. Now it is used only for human beings. Okay. Praja means human beings, but actually the meaning is Praja is anyone who is born within that kingdom. The king is meant to protect all living beings, namely the aquatics, plants, trees, reptiles, birds, animals and man. Every one of them is a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. And the king, being the representative of the Supreme Lord, is duty bound to give proper protection to every one of them. Okay. Not only to the human beings. But in today's system, the lower animals are given no protection, while the higher animals are given so-called protection. Basically, human beings. These are the higher animals. By knowing the science of Krishna, one can become the most perfect man in the world. And unless one has knowledge in this science, all qualifications and doctorate diplomas acquired by academic education are spoiled and useless. Okay, so with this we discussed in the last class that knowledge is supposed to elevate one's consciousness to Krishna consciousness. But unnecessary qualifications or doctorate diplomas which are acquired by lots of studying by academic education and all are basically useless and spoiled. Just like a sabji is spoiled and can't be used, similarly their knowledge is also spoiled and cannot be used for any proper purpose. So science of Krishna is therefore must for perfect administration. Okay, and the king is supposed to administer the state like a father, and the father is sometimes seemingly cruel to the sons, but that does not mean that the father has lost the qualification to be a father. A father is always a father because he always has the good of the sons at heart. Similarly, the king might be strict, okay, enforcing the rules and giving punishments, okay, in such kind of things, okay. But that is just like a strict father who wants his sons not to go disarray, or not to fall back, or not to get diverted from the actual path of dharma. So the king is supposed to be the father of all the citizens. Okay, just like the father is there in the family and he might have many sons. It is the father's responsibility to take care of his sons so that they don't get deviated. They are good, they are moral, they are dharmic, like this. A king's responsibility is to take care of all the citizens in such kind of setup. So his motto of administration was all good for the citizens, for as personified goodness, he knew perfectly well what is actually good for them. Okay. So he conducted the administration on that principle and not on Rakshasi, demonic principle of sense gratification, which is common nowadays. But here he is mentioned as personified goodness. He is the personification of sattva, goodness. So therefore he knew perfectly what is good for them. And Srila Prabhupada writes that if water is poured on the root, the leaves are enlivened perfectly and automatically. So if the praja or people, his citizens, are engaged in devotional service of the Lord, everything becomes peaceful in the kingdom. Okay. People are running behind peace, equality, and so many other, they have all these utopian ideas, but they do not know how that is achievable by just doing rendering or engaging people in devotional service. So if the leaders of the society engage the citizens in devotional service, then all the problems of the society can be removed. Okay. So that is the way of perfect management of state administration. Okay, 3 verses describe Yudhishthira in order to indicate that the cause of attaining such a grandson was his attachment to Krishna. So from Yudhishthira's point of view, okay, he was able to get such a qualified grandson as Maharaj Parikshit because he was attached to Krishna. So one who is a devotee, one is a pure devotee of the Lord, even his descendants are like blessing for him. A great soul appears in the family. Text 5. News even reached the celestial planets about Maharaj Yudhishthira's worldly possessions, the sacrifices by which he would attain a better destination, his queen, his stalwart brothers, his extensive land, his sovereignty over the planet Earth, and his fame, etc. Okay, so his fame, Maharaj Yudhishthira's fame, went all over the world, okay, to the higher planets also. And he ruled over the world known as Jambudvipa, which basically is the first island, okay, on which the Meru mountain is there. So he was not only luring this particular Bharatvarsha Bharat Khanda, but actually the whole Jambudvip, for which we don't have access anymore now. We cannot access Jambudvip at all. But at that time, Maharaj Yudhishthira was ruling the whole of Jambudvip. So amazing. Okay, so one must qualify himself to enter into such happy planets by sacrifice and service. Mr. Prabhu is speaking about the scientist's effort to go to other planets. So if one wants to go to other planets, he should go by sacrifice and service. Those who are sinful in every step of life can expect only to be degraded into animal life, to suffer more and more the pangs of material existence. People who are trying to go to other planets, to the moon, using the spaceships and all, they are all engaged in sinful activities. Okay, so there's no way they can go there by any means. By gross means they cannot go, and even they do not have personal qualification. Without personal qualification, one cannot go to the higher planets. But Yudhishthira's good sacrifices and qualifications were so lofty and virtuous that even the residents of the higher celestial planets were already prepared to receive him as one of them. And in fact, they actually wanted to have similar opulence as Maharaj Yudhishthira. So Maharaj Yudhishthira's rule was such that his opulence was much more than the opulence in the heavenly planets by the mercy of Krishna. The opulence of Maharaj Yudhishthira was such that these were desired by the denizens of heavenly planets. Bhurloka became more attractive than Swarga. So they wanted to come. Text 6. O Brahmanas, the opulence of the king was so enchanting that the denizens of heaven aspired for it. Right? They wanted such kind of opulence. But because he was absorbed in the service of the Lord, nothing could satisfy him except the Lord's service. So even the Yudhishthira Maharaj has this enviable kingdom, such opulence, which even Swargavasis, they desired, but still Maharaj Yudhishthira was not attracted to them. He was attracted only to the service of the Lord. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada writes about satisfaction, which is possible only through service. So there are two things in the world which can satisfy living beings. One is when he is materially engrossed, he is satisfied only by sense gratification. But when one is liberated from the conditions of material modes, he is satisfied only by rendering loving service for the satisfaction of the Lord. So this means that the living being is continually, constitutionally a servitor. Okay. And when Srila Prabhupada writes that one is materially engrossed, he is satisfied only by sense gratification, that basically means that he is satisfied or he thinks that sense gratification will give him happiness. And he does not want to try anything else because of that illusion. Okay, so we go and preach and we tell this material life is miserable, sense gratification is miserable, and people, they don't want to accept it. They don't want to accept it. They want to continue their engagements of sense gratification, and it is sometimes we see also that even though they might be inclined to devotional service, still they cannot give up sense gratification. So all that is because there is a sense of satisfaction which is there that arises from sense gratification, even though they are not getting the ultimate bliss or happiness. Some satisfaction is there, even though it's temporary. But for the liberated soul, the satisfaction is attained by rendering loving service, which is done for satisfaction of the Lord. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada writes that when one is in his proper senses, by attainment of spiritual knowledge, he realizes that he is not the master of the material world, but is only a servant of the senses. At that time, he begs for the service of the Lord and thus becomes happy, without being illusioned by so-called material happiness. These blessings, the opulence of Maharaj Yudhishthira, and other things also, he has a vast kingdom, a good wife, obedient brothers, happy subjects, prosperous world. These are all blessings which automatically follows a pure devotee, even though the devotee does not aspire for them. Okay, so it just follows him. And then the hunger of living entities. Srila Prabhupada writes that every living being in this material world is hungry. Okay, and he tries to satisfy that hunger through material activities. But that hunger is never satisfied. And the foolish leaders also cannot see that even though people are materially completely satisfied or materially are sumptuous, they have everything that they desire, but still they are not satisfied. Okay, because the hunger is always there, and that hunger is for the spiritual atmosphere. And Srila specifically writes, the hunger is actually for spiritual food, spiritual shelter, spiritual defense, and spiritual sense gratification. Okay, so this is sleeping. Okay, then eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Srila Prabhupada correlates that with spiritual food, spiritual shelter, spiritual defense, and spiritual sense gratification. So this is the real hunger. Okay, and this hunger can be satisfied only when the living being is situated in immortality, which is attained in the spiritual sky. O son of Bhrigu, Shaunaka, when the child Parikshit, the great fighter, was in the womb of his mother Uttara and was suffering from the burning heat of the Brahmastra thrown by Ashwatthama, he could observe the Supreme Lord coming to him. So Parikshit Maharaj, when he observed the situation that this Brahmastra has been shot at him, then he observed the Supreme Lord coming to him. Srila Prabhupada explains the exceptional birth of Maharaj Parikshit. And he says that death generally involves remaining in trance for 7 months. What it basically means is a person dies, then he enters the womb of another mother, and throughout the whole time he is unconscious. He is not conscious. Only during the 7th month he gains consciousness. Okay. So that's why it says that death means remaining in trance for 7 months. Okay. 7 months the living entity is completely blanked out. Okay. He is not conscious. When he is awake from trance, he feels the inconvenience of being confined within the womb, and thus he wants to come out of it, and sometimes fortunately prays to the Lord for such liberation, okay, because of his intense suffering. And Maharaj Parikshit was actually subjected to even bigger suffering because the heat of Brahmastra, the most powerful weapon in the world, was directed at the very place, that small sac called womb, and inside which he was just a small baby. And because he was a devotee of the Lord at once appeared himself within the womb by his all-powerful energy. Even in that helpless condition, the child Parikshit endured the unbearable temperature due to his being a great fighter by nature. And for this reason, the word Viraha has been used. Okay. He did not suffer just like an ordinary baby, but he suffered infinitely times more. But still he endured that. Okay. Text 8. He, the Lord, was only thumb high, but he was all transcendental. He had a very beautiful, blackish, infallible body, and he wore a garment of lightning yellow and a helmet of blazing gold. Thus he was seen by the child. Okay. So Paramatma is thumb high, based on that living entity. Okay. So if it's an elephant, it's not our thumb, but elephant's thumb. Gokul Baba mentions this in one of some of the lectures. And he wore a garment of lightning yellow. Right? We have heard this. Text 9. The Lord was enriched with 4 hands, earrings of molten gold, and eyes blood red with fury. As he loitered about, his club constantly encircled him like a shooting star. Okay, so the club was not in his hand, the club was around his body. It was encircling him just like a shooting star. Okay, the Supreme Lord is not limited. So he can appear wherever he wants. He is not limited by anything. And if the Lord desires to save a person, nobody can kill him. And if he desires to kill a person, nobody can save him. Okay, this we know. Merciful as he is, he becomes just suitable to the vision of the limited living being. That he is unlimited means he is not limited by any measurement of our calculation. Okay, so one might think that because the Paramatma who appeared his thumb size, therefore is limited, like this. But he is not limited by any measurement of our calculation. Just because he appeared to a form which is visible to our eyes does not mean that the Supreme Lord is limited. Okay, he is unlimited. There is no difference between the thumb-like Vishnu in the womb of Uttara and the full-fleshed Narayana in the Vaikuntha Dham, the kingdom of Godhead. There is no difference. Okay, so he is not limited that way. And Srila Prabhupada, he speaks about this Archa Vigraha. That Archa Vigraha is also the spiritual form, all spiritual form of the Lord. Okay, so we have discussed this before. For the Lord, there is nothing but spiritual existence. And similarly, there is nothing except spiritual existence for the pure devotee of the Lord in his intimate relation with the Lord. So this also we have discussed that for Krishna, there is nothing which is material. Everything is spiritual for him. Okay, there is nothing but spiritual existence for him. So when he comes as Archa Vigraha, then that is also spiritual existence for the Lord. But it's the most merciful incarnation, Archa incarnation, because it is visible to the material eyes also. Okay. Even though it's all spiritual form, it is still visible to the material eyes. And that makes it, that is the deity's all merciful nature. Okay. Because he is visible to the material eyes, even though the form is completely spiritual. And we don't have spiritual eyes to see the spiritual form. But still the Lord agrees to come. That's amazing. Text 10. The Lord was thus engaged in vanishing the radiation of the Brahmastra, just as the sun evaporates a drop of dew. He was observed by the child, who thought about who he was. So the child, Parikshit, he saw him, but he was not aware who that person is. He thought, oh, who is that person? Who is there? No club is circling around him. Who is that person? Text 11. While thus being observed by the child, the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, the super soul of everyone, and the protector of the righteous, at once disappeared, although he is dressed by all directions and is unlimited by time and space. So Srila Prabhupada it's comparatively smaller purport, but he discusses many points in this. One is that the Lord is unlimited by space and time. We cannot confine the Lord into a specific location. That okay, Krishna is here, Krishna is there, like this. The potency of the Lord, his glory is such that he is unlimited by space and time. So he is there, past, present, and future for eternity. You cannot say he was there before, he is not here now. You cannot say Krishna performed his pastimes that time, now he is not here anymore. Okay. By his nature is that Krishna is all pervading. Okay. So living being and Supreme Lord are both all pervading. And in this connection, Srila Prabhupada writes that in the Bhagavad Gita, both the living beings and the Supreme Being are said to be all pervading. Yet there is a difference between these two kinds of all pervasiveness. The common living being or soul can be all pervading within his own limited body. Correct? This we understand. But the Supreme Living Being is all pervading in all space and all time. So this is one, okay, where pervasiveness is there within our whole body. Okay, so even though the living entity as a spark is there within the region of the heart, but still the influence is there throughout the whole body. So it's all pervasive by his influence. But that influence is limited to this one particular body. Okay. But for the Supreme Lord, okay, even though he is there in his spiritual world in Golokadham, by his influence he is spread everywhere. And that influence we cannot even say that it's impersonal. Okay. His personal influence is there. So he appears, as it said, as Paramatma, he enters each and every atom. Okay. So the form of the Lord is there in each and every atom. Okay. We are not saying that Brahman is there in each and every atom. It's impersonal. Paramatma means there is personality. There is a person there. The 400 Vishnu form is there. And he is there within each and every atom. So personally he is there. Okay. And because he is all pervasive, unlimited by time and space, he can appear even within the womb of the mother of child Parikshit. And one more important point is his disappearance. Yeah, he can appear because he is unlimited by time and space. And when he disappears, his disappearance from the sight of the child Parikshit does not mean that he had appeared on the spot from any other place. He was always present there, and even after his disappearance, he was there, although invisible to the eyes of the child. So when Paramatma enters each and every atom, he is there within this room also, within each and every atom. It's just that he is not appearing in front of us. That's all. Okay. So he's there. He's there everywhere. And if he so desires, he can manifest himself from wherever he wants. Okay. Because he is there everywhere. So even within the womb, this sentence is very, very important to understand, that even within the womb, he disappeared. Okay. Something appears and disappears when, from our point of view, we say that appeared and disappeared when we see it, and then when we are not able to see it. But it's just our vision that is affected. Okay, it's not that the Supreme Lord goes away from that place. So he was there within the womb because he's there within each and every atom. Okay, so he was there within the womb before he appeared. When he appeared, he became visible to the eyes of child Parikshit, and then after some time he disappeared. Then also he was there, he just became invisible to the eyes of child Parikshit. So this is the case within the womb. But because the Lord is all pervading throughout the whole creation, he can manifest himself wherever he wants to. So actually he is there within this room, in each and every one of our heart. with each and every atom in this whole creation. So it is just to, if we can develop that vision, or more importantly, if the Lord is merciful or He becomes pleased with us, then He can manifest His spiritual form right at that same place where we are. Because He's always there. Krishna is always there. Krishna is never away. We cannot say, okay, the deities are there and Krishna is there. He's not there in the ashram. No, He's there also. So He can see everybody, everything, what we do, and all kinds of activities He can observe as a witness. So He knows everything. Okay, so that's what it is. So He just becomes, so that's why now this appearance and disappearance make more sense. When we say Lord appeared and disappeared, it makes more sense because He was already there. He just appeared to our eyes and then He disappeared from our eyes. Okay. So He is present everywhere, even in its material womb of Mother Durga. And those who are deserving can see the Lord. So this material world is also like a womb of Mother Durga. This whole material creation is the womb of Mother Durga, in which all the living entities have been placed. Okay, so there also the Lord is there, and He can appear to those who are deserving. Lord protects the righteous directly and the unrighteous through His eternal potency. So this point is discussed. Dust by 10 directions, disappearance and appearance, and the universe like a womb of mother. So multiple points are discussed in this purport. Okay. Thereupon, when all the good signs of the zodiac gradually evolved, the heir apparent of Pandu, who would be exactly like him in prowess, took birth. So from this verse 12 to 15, the birth of Maharaj Parikshit is Suta Goswami is speaking about the birth of Maharaj Parikshit. Astronomical calculations of stellar influences. Astronomical calculations of stellar influences upon a living being are not suppositions, but are factual as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. So the astronomical influences, the influences of different grihas or planets are factual. Okay. The law of nature is so subtle that every part of our body is influenced by the respective stars. And a living being obtains his working body to fulfill his term of imprisonment by the manipulation of such astronomical influence. A man's destiny is therefore ascertained by the birth time constellation of stars, and a factual horoscope is made by a learned astrologer. It's a great science, and misuse of a science does not make it useless. Okay, so this horoscope making and seeing this horoscope is basically like a photograph of the planets when the child is born. Okay, which planet is there in which position, in which houses. Each planet has its own house. Okay, in the celestial realm also. Okay, so each planet will be there in one of his houses. And when a boy or when a child is born and a baby is born, the horoscope takes a photograph, or basically that particular time, it shows which graha will be there in which house or where he is placed. Okay, and based on the position of the graha, the whole life of the child can be understood. Okay, how his life is going to be, whether he will be intelligent, whether he will have opulence, which ashrama he is more inclined to, all kinds of things can be found out just by understanding the position of the graha at the time of birth. So it's a great science. But nowadays people are not aware of this science, or many people are not aware of this science. So even those so-called astrologers, they also speculate a lot. So the science is available, but because of the misuse of the science does not make it useless. So those who can see horoscope properly, they can actually tell what is going to happen in future. Auspicious moment chosen for Parikshit's birth. Okay, and Srila Prabhupada says that whenever a great personality, whenever the Supreme Lord appears in the world, or when a great pure devotee comes to this world, then the auspicious moment, the constellations of stars arranged in such a way, or the child is born in such a way, or the Supreme Lord appears in such a way, that the constellations or the stars or the planets are arranged such that they are the most auspicious for the appearance of the pure devotee or the Supreme Lord. Yeah. And the most auspicious constellation of stars takes place during the appearance of the Lord in this material world, and it's specifically called Jayanti, a word not to be abused for any other purposes. So this arrangement of the stars is called as Jayanti. Okay, that name, that nomenclature is Jayanti. Okay, so you cannot have any other Jayanti apart from the Lord's Jayanti, because it's actually the arrangement of the constellations of stars. Okay. This suitable arrangement of astral influences is never a creation of man's will, but is the arrangement of the superior management of the agency of the Supreme Lord. Only by pious acts can one be allowed to get good wealth, good education, and beautiful features. So even one's wealth, education, and features are also determined by the planetary positions, the position of the planet. If Shukra is very exalted in someone's chart, he is beautiful. Okay. And similarly, if Guru is prominent in the Lagna itself, then he is more intelligent. Like that, there are different planets. Yeah, samskaras. Srila Prabhupada speaks about samskaras, and he says that the samskaras of the school of Sanatana Dharma are highly suitable for creating an atmosphere for taking advantage of good stellar influences. And therefore, the Garbhadhana Samskara, or the first seedling purificatory process prescribed for the higher caste, is the beginning of all pious acts for receiving a good, pious, and intelligent class of men in human society. So this Garbhadhana Samskara, when the husband and wife come to have children, okay, this is also to be undertaken after looking at proper astrological positions. What is the nakshatra? Okay, what tithi is that? Okay, which planet is heavy? What is Chandrabala, Tarabala? There are so many different regulations which have to be followed. Okay, and that is required for Garbhadhana Samskara. There are auspicious times, and these auspicious times also influence the boy or the soul who is going to take birth in that particular family. So many things are there. But if these things are not followed, then there is hell and disturbance only because of the unwanted, insane populace addicted to sex indulgence. And in Bhagavatam, we see when Diti was agitated and she begged Kashyap Muni for a child, Hiranyaksha and Kashyap were born, because that moment was not auspicious for procreation of a child. And because it was a completely inauspicious moment, who were born were the greatest of the demons. Right? So now this is happening because people are not following the Garbhadhana Samskara. They are not taking into effect the astronomical influences, the influence of the stars and planets. So when they indulge in producing children, the children who are born are of demoniac influence. Okay, they're hellish. They have hellish consciousness. Text 13. King Yudhishthir, who was very satisfied with the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, had learned Brahmanas, headed by Dhaumya and Kripa, perform the purificatory process of birth and recite auspicious hymns. Okay. Unless such purificatory processes are performed, there is no possibility of good population. And in the age of Kali, the population all over the world is of Shudra quality or lower for want of this purificatory process. But there is hope by this Pancharatrika process. The Pancharatrika system acts on the Shudra class of men, supposedly the population of the Kali Yuga, and it is the prescribed purificatory process suitable to the age and time. Okay. So even those who have not been purified by these Garbhadhana Samskaras and other Samskaras which are supposed to be followed after one's birth, still they can be uplifted by this Pancharatrika system. Therefore, all the samskaras, purificatory processes, are not mere formalities or social functions only, but they are all for practical purposes. Okay. And they perform this Jata Karma. Jata Karma was the first samskara which is performed after the baby is born. Okay. As soon as the baby is born, this Jata Karma is done. One of the samskaras. Srila Prabhupada gives details about Kripacharya. Okay. And this point is interesting. Maharaj Yudhishthir, while quitting the palace for his great departure to the Himalayas, entrusted Kripacharya with Maharaj Parikshit as his disciple. And Yudhishthira left home satisfied because of Kripacharya's taking charge of Maharaj Parikshit. So Kripacharya has been there right from the time of Dhritarashtra, Pandu and Vidura until Maharaj Parikshit. Upon the birth of a son, the king, who knew how, where and when charity should be given, gave gold, land, villages, elephants, horses and good food grains to the Brahmanas. So he gave all these things in charity. Only the Brahmanas and Sannyasis are authorized to accept charity from the householders. The word Tirthavit is significant because the king knew well where and when charity has to be given. Charity is never unproductive or blind, which basically means charity should not be given blindly. Anyone who comes, you give him charity. Okay. This charity in the modes are discussed in Bhagavad Gita, right? The so-called Daridra Narayana, a misconception of the Supreme Lord by unauthorized persons, is never to be found in the Shastras as the object of charity. Nor can a wretched poor man receive much munificent charity in the way of horses, elephants, land and villages. Again, this is criticizing this Vivekananda's philosophy of Daridra Narayana. He says the poor is Narayana, is on the same level as Narayana, and because his Daridra is poor, therefore we should give charity to Narayana. Giving charity to Narayana, that is the philosophy, that's why it's bogus. It is enjoined in the Shastras that as long as the child is joined with the mother by the umbilical cord, the child is considered to be of one body with the mother. But that as soon as the cord is cut and the child is separated from the mother, the purificatory process of Jata Karma should be performed. The administrative demigods and past forefathers of the family come to see a newly born child. Okay, it's amazing. Because nowadays, babies are born in hospitals and the umbilical cord is cut by the nurses. So what Jata Karma? Nothing is performed. So we make a compromise. When the child comes back to the home, then we have this Jata Karma or things like that. But actually, as soon as the child is separated from the mother, Jata Karma is supposed to be performed at that time. Okay, and there are different procedures how this should be done. And this Jata Karma, if it's performed, then the baby becomes very intelligent. Okay, because he's given a little bit of ghee and it's mixed with honey, little bit of honey and little bit of gold. It's given to the tongue of the boy, of the child, of the baby. And that makes the baby very intelligent, inclined towards dharma. And if Jata Karma is not performed, then it's not proper. Okay, let's put it there. Okay, so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, what is given at the birth of a son or during calamity has indestructible results with respect to charity. Whatever is given, the charity that is given during the birth of a son, it has indestructible results. Vasudeva also gave in charity when Krishna was born, in his mind. And Nanda Maharaj also did. Text 15. The learned Brahmanas, who were very satisfied with the charities of the king, addressed him as the chief amongst the Purus and informed him that his son was certainly in the line of descent from the Purus. Okay. So the Brahmanas now will speak about the qualities of Parikshit Maharaj based on the astral influences. So the Brahmana said, this spotless son has been restored by the all-powerful and all-pervasive Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, in order to oblige you. He was saved when he was doomed to be destroyed by an irresistible supernatural weapon. So in this purport, Srila Prabhupada speaks about what is Krishna's mission and why he saved Maharaj Parikshit. What was the reason? So the reason is already given, that in order to oblige Maharaj Yudhishthira. Anyways, we'll read. It says that child Parikshit was saved by the all-powerful and all-pervasive Vishnu for two reasons. The first reason is that the child in the womb of his mother was spotless due to his being a pure devotee of the Lord. The second reason is that the child was the only surviving male descendant of Puru, the pious forefather of the virtuous king Yudhishthira. Because after the battle of Kurukshetra, even Yudhishthira's sons, or rather the Pandava's son, everybody was killed. And even Abhimanyu was killed. Okay. So Parikshit Maharaj is the only son, okay, who can continue the ruling, or who can continue ruling the way Maharaj Yudhishthira was ruling, which was the desire of Krishna. So Lord Krishna, the original personality of Godhead, does the work of protection and annihilation in his capacity of Vishnu. Lord Vishnu is the plenary expansion of Lord Krishna. The all-pervasive activities of the Lord are executed by him in his Vishnu feature. And child Parikshit was saved in that way. Text 17. For this reason, this child will be well known in the world as one who is protected by the personality of Godhead. O most fortunate one, there is no doubt that this child will become a first-class devotee and will be qualified with all good qualities. Okay, so as far as Krishna's unalloyed devotees are concerned, he gives them protection personally. Okay. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit was protected from the very beginning of his appearance in the womb of his mother. So he is given Parikshit Maharaj's address as Vishnu Rata. Okay, Vishnu Rata means one who is protected by Vishnu. And he was protected because he was an unalloyed devotee of the Lord. Okay, three grades of devotees. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about this Mahabhagata, Madhyamadikari and Kanishthaadikari. And he says, a devotee who may be in any of these categories is automatically qualified by all good qualities. And thus, a Mahabhagata devotee like Maharaj Parikshit is certainly perfect in all respects. And because Maharaj Parikshit took his birth in the family of Maharaj Yudhishthira, Yudhishthira is addressed herein as Mahabhaga, or the greatest of the fortunate. And Srila Prabhupada also writes that the family in which Mahabhagata takes his birth is fortunate because due to the birth of first great devotee, the members of the family, past, present and future, up to 100 generations become liberated by the grace of the Lord out of respect for his beloved devotee. Therefore, the highest benefit is done to one's family simply by becoming an unalloyed devotee of the Lord. So, Parikshit Maharaj was such an unalloyed devotee of the Lord. Yudhishthira Maharaj asks the questions now. He said, the all-good king Yudhishthira inquired, O great souls, will he become as saintly a king, as pious in his very name, and as famous and glorified in his achievements as others who appear in this great royal family? He was happy. So Maharaj Yudhishthira was happy to learn from the learned Brahmanas that by astrological calculations, the child had been born a first great devotee of the Lord. And now he wanted to know with confidence whether the child was going to follow in the footsteps of his great forefathers. The reigning king should be a pious, chivalrous devotee of the Lord, and fear personified for the upstarts. He must also leave an heir apparent equally qualified to rule over the innocent citizens. So this is Yudhishthira Maharaj's question. Will he do all these things? Will he rule as a pious king and a chivalrous devotee of the Lord and fear personified for the upstarts? Will he have qualified children? Will he do all these things? Okay, he will be a first grade devotee, fine, but will he also take care of his citizens and engage them in devotion service? These are the questions. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada again compares with the modern system and he says that the result is corruption, intrigue and hypocrisy. Because low grade men who are not qualified, they take up leadership posts and they do not retire unless they are forced to do so. Okay, so such kind of kings are not qualified in any way. So Maharaj Yudhishthira wanted to know how will he rule? Will he keep up the name of the great family in which he has come, the Puru kingdom? So the Brahmanas replied, they said, the learned Brahmanas said, O son of Pritha, this child shall be exactly like King Ikshvaku, son of Manu, in maintaining all those who are born. Okay, so he will maintain his citizens very nicely. And as far as following the Brahminical principles, especially in being true to his promise, he shall be exactly like Rama, the personality of Godhead, the son of Maharaj Dasharath. Okay. Yes. So this is Srila Prabhupada speaks about what Praja is, which we have already discussed, and about Maharaj Ikshvaku and Manu. And here specifically, it's discussing about Vaivasvata Manu, and mankind is the descendant of Manu. Okay, that's why it's called mankind, and in Hindi it's also called Manav. Right? Manav means the descendant of Manu. Okay, so Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he explains, or he writes, you asked if he would have fame like the previous great kings. All their qualities by which they became famous exist in this boy now, and as the occasion arises, they will manifest. Therefore, they were not equal to him, since he has the qualities of all of them. So, all the kings who have appeared in his great line, Maharaj Parikshit has all these qualities. They might have exhibited only one or two qualities, different personalities, but Maharaj Parikshit has all the qualities of all these people. This child will be munificent donor of charity and protector of the surrendered, like the famous King Shibi of the Ushinara country. And he will expand the name and fame of his family like Bharat, the son of Maharaj Dushyant. A Kshatriya king is proud to give protection to the surrendered souls. This attitude of a king is called Ishvara Bhava, or factual power to give protection in a righteous cause. Okay. So this is called Ishvara Bhava. So this tendency is there to be the protector or controller. Okay. And if it's independent, if he thinks he's independently protector and controller, then he gets bewildered, corrupted by power. Okay, because his Ishvara Bhava corrupts. But when one understands that he is a representative of the Supreme Lord, who is the actual Ishvara, then Ishvara Bhava helps in engaging citizens in proper dharmic activities. Then it's mentioned about Maharaj Shivi, and yeah, I'll just read this. Then Dushyant Bharat. Srila Prabhupada speaks about how this, in even Bhagavad Gita, this son of Bharat is mentioned. Krishna addresses as Bharata. So, this Bharata basically refers to this Bharat, who was the son of King Dushyanta and Shakuntala. These stories are Prabhupada mentions this here. In the instances, these are more elaborately described in Mahabharata. So, the Pandavas or the Kurus are sometimes addressed as Bharat due to being born in the dynasty of the famous Maharaj Bharat, son of King Dushyanta. Okay, more details are there in Adi Parva of Mahabharata. Amongst great bowmen, this child will be as good as the Arjunas. He will be as irresistible as fire and as unsurpassable as the ocean. Okay, so there are two Arjunas. One is Kartavirya Arjuna and the other is the grandfather of Parikshit Maharaj. Okay, so while Arjuna was taking all the wives of Krishna to Indraprastha, he was attacked on the way and he could not protect the ladies in his custody. And before that, when Vasudeva passed away, Arjuna performed his funeral ceremony in the absence of Krishna because Krishna has already left. On the way, at the request of his brother, he gave up all his important weapons as useless and dropped them all in the water. This is when they are going to the Swarga Rohana. They are going to these heavenly planets. This child will be as strong as a lion and as worthy a shelter as the Himalaya mountains. He will be forbearing like the earth and as tolerant as parents. Okay. So child will be as strong as a lion. One should be a lamb at home and a lion in the chase. The lion never fails in the chase of an animal. Similarly, the head of the state should never fail in chasing an enemy. So, he is as strong as a lion. Then, worthy a shelter as the Himalayan mountains. Any man who is not materially prosperous can take shelter of these great mountains and he will be provided with everything required. Okay. So, Parikshit Maharaj also was a worthy shelter as the Himalayan mountains, because one who is not materially prosperous, then if he takes shelter of the king, then he can get whatever he wants. Okay. So like that. Then he will be forbearing like the earth. And he says, on the surface of the earth there are so many disturbances caused by the inhabitants. In the modern age, people have begun to detonate atomic weapons on the surface of the earth. And still the earth is forbearing to the inhabitants, like a mother who excuses a little child. So the earth is forbearing because even though so many demoniac activities are being carried out, still, she has not fallen to the depths of Garbhodaka ocean. Okay, that is one thing. And she's still giving grains. She's still giving all the necessities of all living entities are supplied by the earth. The cloth is supplied by earth. Food is supplied by earth. Okay, water is supplied by earth. So earth supplies just like a mother. Parents are always tolerant to children for all sorts of mischievous acts. So an ideal king possesses all these good qualities. And Parikshit is foretold to have all these good qualities in perfection. Okay, text 23. This child will be like his grandfather Yudhishthira or Brahma in equanimity of mind. He will be munificent like the lord of Kailasha hill, Shiva, and he will be the resort of everyone, like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, who is the shelter of even the goddess of fortune. So mental equanimity like his grandfathers. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada writes, any responsible executive agent at the top of administration has to tolerate different types of onslaughts from the very persons for whom he works. Okay. For whom he's working, he has to accept. All kinds of complaints would be there, all kinds of mischievous activities might be there. So he has to accept or he has to tolerate all that, just like a grandfather. So Maharaj Yudhishthira had to cross over many difficult situations created by his enemies, and he proved to be the most perfect maintainer of mental equanimity in all critical circumstances. Therefore, the example of both grandfathers for maintaining equanimity of mind is quite fitting. So even though the Pandavas were banished to the forest for 12 or 13 years, still Maharaj Yudhishthira never got deviated from his principles of following dharma. So equal mental equanimity. Munificent like Lord Shiva. Because Lord Shiva is called as Ashutosha, he is very easily pleased and he awards gifts very easily. So the king should be like that, and Parikshit Maharaj will be like this. Okay, so that's the point. And shelter like Supreme Personality of Godhead, who gives shelter to the goddess of fortune. Srila Prabhupada concludes, only Vishnu and the devotees of Vishnu can give protection to all. And because Maharaj Parikshit was himself protected by Vishnu, it was quite possible for him to give complete protection to all who wanted to live under his rule. Okay. Text 24. This child will be almost as good as Lord Shri Krishna by following in his footsteps. In magnanimity, he will become as great as King Rantideva. And in religion, he will be like Maharaj Jayati. Okay. And in purport, it's given, to follow the instructions of the Lord is to associate with the Lord. The Lord is not a material object whose presence one has to feel for such association. The Lord is present everywhere and at all times. Okay. So, Maharaj Parikshit associated with the Lord even from the womb of his mother up to the last day of his valuable life. And thus he acquired all the essential good qualities of the Lord in all perfection. It's mentioned that the child will be almost as good as Lord Krishna by following in his footsteps. Okay, so how can one become as good as Krishna? By following his instructions. That is the point. And by following his instructions, one associates with Krishna. And by associating with Krishna like this, all good qualities develop in him. Okay, then it's mentioned about Rantidev and Yayati. Okay. Srila Prabhupada also speaks about this Varna Shankara. And this information comes from Mahabharata. So you can just read it. Text 25. This child will be like Bali Maharaj in patience, a staunch devotee of Lord Krishna like Prahlad Maharaj, a performer of many Ashwamedha horse sacrifices, and a follower of the old and experienced men. Okay. And Srila Prabhupada speaks about the great devotees mentioned in this verse, Bali Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj. And both are Mahajanas. So Parikshit Maharaj will be like them. So if you see these qualities, all the good qualities of the Supreme Lord and all the great devotees, the qualities of the great devotees are all present in the personality of Parikshit Maharaj. This is the prediction. This child will be the father of kings who will be like sages. For world peace and for the sake of religion, he will be the chastiser of the upstarts and the quarrelsome. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about the wisest men who are the Rajarishis. So he says, unless that the king or the head of the state is the wisest man, he cannot control all types of wise men in the state. And such wise kings can become chastisers of upstart and uprooters of Kali or quarrelsome elements. Okay. And the wisest man in the world is a devotee of the Lord. And wise rulers of all states should take lessons from Maharaj Parikshit. Okay, so this is in relation to his see, it's mentioned that the child will be the father of kings who will be like sages. So he is actually the protector or the father of all other Rajarishis. He himself is so great, he himself is so wise that all the Rajarishis also are under his protection or under his shelter. Okay. Yeah. So it says peace and morality can prosper only by the principles of Maharaj Parikshit, and this follows. So in these purports, each of the qualities which are mentioned of Parikshit Maharaj, those qualities are elaborated, and it is mentioned how by performing or by cultivating such qualities one can have a peaceful society. After hearing about his impending death due to the bite of a snake bird sent by a son of a Brahmana, he will get himself freed from all material attachment and surrender onto the personality of Godhead, taking shelter of him. So till this point, till the 26th verse, it is mentioned what are the qualities of Maharaj Parikshit, and now his activities are mentioned. Okay. And Srila Prabhupada makes it very clear that material attachment and taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord go ill together. Because material attachment means ignorance of transcendental happiness. And when one is ignorant of transcendence and is engaging in material activities, is attached to material activities, then he will not be able to go back to Godhead. He cannot get himself liberated. But in case of Parikshit Maharaj, the so-called warning of his death within 7 days from the date of the curse of the Brahmana's son was a boon to him to enable him to prepare himself to go back home, back to Godhead. Because if one person knows when he is going to die, then he can free himself from all material attachment. Okay. But if one person does not know that, then he becomes relaxed. He becomes lax. So, recently I heard this instance. I think it was Satswarup Maharaj who asked a question to Prabhupada. And he said that we understand that we have to die and our life is short. But still we are not able to perform our devotional service very intensely. So how can we do that? How can we chant with that intensity? With focus on Krishna like this. Srila Prabhupada said that you have to think that next moment you are going to die, or next minute you are going to die. Because that is possible. Okay. Any minute one person can leave his body. So if you contemplate like this, then automatically you will make your bhajan or you will make your sadhana very intense. So that is how you are supposed to do. Okay. So because we do not know when we are going to leave this body, now with 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, we will have no idea, or maybe next minute itself. Therefore, one should always think of Krishna. That intensity should be there, and material attachment should be rejected. Okay, so we have two more verses, then we can stop for today. After inquiring about proper self-knowledge from the great philosopher's son of Vyasadeva, he will renounce all material attachment and achieve a life of fearlessness. So material attachment is synonymous with fear. Okay, if one is materially attached, he is always fearful. Okay, so one who has fear in his life, he should understand that he is materially attached. His fear arises because he has some material attachments. But one who does not have any material attachment is never fearful. This fearful is called anxiety. And this material world is full of anxiety. So Srimad Bhagavatam gives us a chance to change the quality of anxiety from matter to spirit. So one should be anxious, but for serving the Lord, not because or not for his existence in this material realm. And Srila Prabhupada also writes about this professional recitation of Srimad Bhagavatam, because it's mentioned here that he will achieve proper self-knowledge from great philosopher's son of Vyasadeva, means Shukdev Goswami. Okay. From Munehe, okay, from the learned philosopher. So one should accept Srimad Bhagavatam from such a great learned scholar and not from professional reciters, because such imitative hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is a caricature only. Caricature only means that it has a form, but it has no life. Okay, the form looks like all these verses are taken from Bhagavatam. It looks like Srimad Bhagavatam Katha, but it does not have a life. It's just a caricature. It's dead, basically. Thus, those who are very expert in astrological knowledge and in performance of the birth ceremony instructed King Yudhishthira about the future of the child. Then, being sumptuously remunerated, they all returned to their respective homes. And so these are branches of Vedic knowledge. Astrology or Jyotish is a branch of Vedic knowledge. Proper astrology and pathology are two important branches, and they are necessary for the common man. Okay. So the intelligent men, generally known as Brahmanas, took up all the different branches of Vedic knowledge to guide society. Okay. And Vipra and Brahmana. So here Yudhishthira Maharaj, he remunerated these Brahmanas, okay, this who did or who saw or who predicted the future of Parikshit Maharaj. Prabhupada writes, the Vipras are those who are expert in karma kanda or fruitive activities, guiding the society towards fulfilling the material necessities of life, whereas the Brahmanas are expert in spiritual knowledge of transcendence. This department of knowledge is called Jnana Kanda, and above this there is the Upasana Kanda. The culmination of the Upasana Kanda is a devotional service of Lord Vishnu, and when the Brahmanas achieve perfection, they are called Vaishnavas. So the Vipras are one who are very scholarly or who have studied the Vedic knowledge. So therefore, they are expert in Karma Kanda activities. Jataka Vipras were good astrologers who could tell all the future activities of a newborn child simply by the astral calculations of the birth time or Lagna. Okay. And Maharaj Yudhishthira awarded these Vipras sumptuously with gold, land, villages, grains and other valuable necessities of life, which also include cows. There is a need of such Vipras in the social structure, and it is a duty of the state to maintain them comfortably, as designed in the Vedic procedure. Such expert Vipras were well paid, or being well paid in kind by the state, could give free service to the people in general, and thus this department of Vedic knowledge could be available for all. So these Vipras who are expert in different branches of Vedic knowledge, Ayurveda or in pathology, astrological and pathology. Pathology means basically Ayurveda. Okay, astrology is your Jyotish or Jyotish Shastra or Jataka Shastra. So those Brahmanas or Vipras who are expert in these things, they are maintained by the state, and that way they can give free service to all the people. So just like the king guides his citizens into spiritual life, these Brahmanas, they are also meant to guide or to facilitate the people in the society so that they can take note of what they are actually supposed to do. So if a person knows how his qualities are going to be, then he can be properly engaged in those occupational duties. Okay, just by seeing the chart, one can understand what kind of qualities he will possess. Okay, just I told if Guru Lagna is high, it's understood that he'll be very intelligent, he'll be Brahmanically inclined. Okay, and if the chart or if the planetary positions are different or arranged in such a way, one can understand what will be his inclination of work. Okay, whether he'll be more inclined to work as a Shudra, as a Vaishya, as a Kshatriya, like this. So he can be trained properly. Once this is made known by his chart, horoscope, then he can be trained properly, he can be channeled properly, he can be brought up properly, and his life can be settled in that way. Okay, and even then, different aspects. This Jataka Viparas also will match the horoscopes when a person has to enter the Grihastha ashram. Okay, they'll also tell the auspicious times and places where one person is supposed to conduct specific ceremonies like Garbhadan Samskar or different samskaras this person is supposed to do. All those things can be told, or all those things are told by this kind of brahmanas who are expert in this knowledge. So this is required in the society. In the Varnashrama system it's required. Okay. So we'll stop here. Do you have any questions? No questions. Yeah, the purports were big, but more of a reading exercise than, because these things are already very simple. Fine. Yes. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki,